That guy's a gangster?
Hey there. This is Poda Bing Redux, a podcast that rigorously examines The Sopranos and all things that flow from it all over again. And in its latest form, segments that look at a couple or three aspects of the show instead of a couple or 3,000. I'm Vik Singh, and today's Sopranos launching point is a hit. And before this surely isn't one, drawing a scoff and ire of one Hesh Rabkin,
"You pathetic schlepper."
To quote the federal prosecutor,
Get on it.
kicking things off for What's With the Tone, I've got what could have been the subject of an entire episode without the addition of a gangster rapper trying to collect back royalties on behalf of another artist plot. Tony hanging out with the Metagon, or someone in the mind of the speaker who has become too Americanized, lost touch with traditional notions of one's culture. A relatable predicament, truly a shared cultural experience any of us have faced when we ourselves or those we associate with were considered whitewashed, caught between two worlds, and historically labeled self-referential things like Wonder Bread Wops to Italian Americans, bagel and lox for Jewish people who are more about the culture than the actual religion, ABCs for Chinese Americans, ABCDs for South Asians, yours truly included, pochos for Mexican Americans, especially those that don't speak Spanish, and mix for Irish Americans. Now, the particular genius at work here is Chase's decision to illustrate this dichotomy, this us versus them notion, in probably the most American of ways. Guys around a barbecue talking shop, where one of the guys, of course, is kind of on the outside looking in. Here, Tony, trying to get in on some insider information while twirling salsich. And the others, the wops, or just the one, Cusimano, trying to shine bright in front of his country club propers, trying to fit in as Tony sees it, inauthentically. Though you'd never catch Tony saying that word, inauthentic. But back to those guys. Shutting him out like that, those looks, those pauses, their brains weren't quite seeing all the permutations at like internet speed, or maybe they were, and that was part of it. Apart from the barbecue, there's the golf course, also probably in the top 5 ways to say you're American without saying you're American. Right up there with deep fried everything, PBJs, Black Friday, or debates around tipping culture.
There's $1,200 in there.
That's correct. And the bill was $1,184.
Then there's the microaggressions.
How real was The Godfather? You ever go down to Little Italy? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to.
The trade-off. Common to many social interactions. We'll let you play at our little club if you answer questions. Put on a show. Open the kimono a little. Oblige a bit of cultural tourism. When, in the end, Tony's only going to be seen one way, no matter what. Which brings us to Tony's realization about it all in Melfi's office. It's the completion of his arc this episode, getting Cusimano back for letting him be undressed by the other guys like that, without cover. There's something about the way he completes it through story. Jimmy Smash, a proxy for that one person we all grew up with who was different, who we perhaps even made fun of, and the things we learn from them that we carry along the way. The setup for all this is so simple, it almost disappears. Getting a big score and wanting to go legit with it. That opening sequence of Chris and company.
Fucking crackheads and their small bills.
The dilemma of an ill-gotten score. Money with baggage. Not letting you walk away clean. The best versions of this across TV and film are centered on the theme that money alone doesn't equal legitimacy, but rather power, connections, and perception do. Think about Walter White, Tony Montana, or even Michael Corleone. Also, the juxtaposition of Carm getting stock tips versus Tony, the tone of that, the ease with which the women spoke versus the cloak and dagger approach of the guys. The idea that it's a form of social currency for Carm and friends, a talk show even, whereas it's a zero-sum game for the guys, where any dilution whatsoever is an L on the win-loss ledger. Next, for who got their quotations book shoved up their fat fucking ass this week, it's Massive Genius.
You people are all right.
A continuation, if you will, of what's happening with Tony this episode, only now it's from a black rapper to Christopher. Classic Chase move, turning what we expect or think should happen, then subverting it. Note, this just after Chris got his in while waiting for a couple of burger baskets.
Hey, whose fucking welfare check you gotta cash to get a burger around here?
This whole episode is in large part about how different groups of people perceive other groups and how those other groups perceive them back. The cultural dissonance, the psychology, history, and I guess sociology of all that.
Fuck do I know?
Without getting too Yuval Noah Harari about it, it's evolution, baby. Realizing full well that I just got Eddie Vedder about it. But seriously, it's that in-group versus out-group bias. Since time immemorial, we humans have favored those who looked, spoke, and behaved like us as a means for survival. By the same token, those who were different, the out-group, were seen as potential threats.
Are you threatening me? What threatening?
As advanced and complex as our brains are, they're still pretty wired to an us versus them bias. Those of you that have kids, you see it in them, despite any and all efforts to teach or encourage the opposite. From choices of jersey they wear to school, to what's in your lunch, to who watches Sunday on YouTube versus Bluey Try Not to Laugh.
Is everybody in my life bananas or what?
As people connected through ways like migration, trade, and colonization, these interactions were usually unequal, which created its own set of beliefs, resentments, and stereotypes, many of which exist today. Partly, you'd think, because of our ingrained cognitive dissonance, our inherent dislike of being wrong, especially when confronted with ideas or perspectives that challenge our worldview.
No. I don't want any of that California bullshit.
Sopranos, in large part, explores this throughout the series. And through perhaps most the anti-hero of anti-heroes, we inure ourselves to Tony over and over, mostly because he gives us glimpses of humanity's ability to get things right, even if he, overall, mostly gets it wrong. And, you know, sometimes we can't just go all deep cut. The title of this episode is directly quoted and merits mention, if not a full extrapolation. And odds are if you're here, you're expecting the latter, because even a broken clock is right twice a day. Is a hit a hit? And where's the line between magic, je ne sais quoi, and, well, visiting day?
My ear hurts.
And what did it mean in the time of The Sopranos, and what does it mean right now? Hesh said we couldn't comprehend or codify it, but what does he know? In the end, he turned out to be a pathetic schlepper, as he said, just like the rest of us, right?
At what point is it cheaper for him to settle it another way?
A hit, descriptively, is something that breaks through. That's undeniable. It's got little to do with quality or personal taste or even effort. It hinges on impact. Tom Chaplin of the band Keane holding out his microphone to a crowd of over 100,000 so they can sing back Something Only We Know, a song that's over 20 years old, is undeniable. Even if everything they did after that album never compared. Hopes and Fears clocked enough hits to last a lifetime. I still remember hearing them for the first time on SNL, one of the few performances I've never forgotten. In the time of The Sopranos, a hit was something with label backing, promotional pushes, and strong sales and airplay numbers. Today it streams, sure, but there's more to it. There's a virality component, cultural saturation. As imperfect as things still may be, it's more democratic or less manufactured than when The Sopranos first aired. But of course, as with everything these days, the answer is more nuanced than that. A hit today can be a niche hit. They don't necessarily have to be mainstream anymore. I put all this to the test and plucked one song from every year since 2000 to see if A, I remembered the song, B, whether I remembered the hook, and for bonus points, C, if I remembered the artist's name.
Well, you only remember what you want to remember.
So, play along with me. I'll name the song, see if you know it, and if you can name the artist, shout it out, especially if you're listening to this with headphones, so that everyone around you thinks you've lost your mind or something. I'll pop their name up below in case you want confirmation, self-validation. And by the way, I didn't pick songs I necessarily liked. I tried to pick ones that were undeniable so we could stress test undeniability, not my musical taste. So, starting in 2000, Say My Name, with honorable mention that year to Higher. Couldn't resist when I saw it. 2001, Get Your Freak On. 2002, Hot in Here. 2003, Hey Ya. 2004, Yeah. 2005, We Belong Together, My Girl. Starting to see a pattern here, how you can either sing the next lyric or hum along. 2006, Crazy. 2007, Umbrella. 2008, I Kissed a Girl. 2009, Poker Face. 2010, Hey Soul Sister. 2011, Rolling in the Deep. 2012, Somebody That I Used to Know. 2013, Blurred Lines. 2014, Happy. 2015, Uptown Funk. 2016, One Dance. 17, Humble. 18, God's Plan. 19, Old Town Road. 2020, Watermelon Sugar. 21, Levitating. 22, As It Was. 23, Antihero. And 24, if you even have to think, you don't know, Espresso. So, how many did you get? Hit me up, let me know. Or don't.
Fuck you on a boutonniere?
Okay, next, for Finn's thinking out loud again moment. Talking shit about your neighbors. And, I don't know, a footnote on husbands and wives friend groups and their stock picking strategies and other cagey topics. Of course, here, the guy's not wanting to let Tony in on their little insider trading ring, whereas the women touting their bona fides with a hint of, you're late to the party. Why do we always, no matter where we live, and no matter what station we're at in life, end up living next to at least one batshit neighbor? Without fail. As I look into this lens apparatus, I'm looking right at you. You. Fuck you. You know who you are. What's interesting, though, we hate them for existing, but often we don't want them to sell or move because the specter of new neighbors is also fraught with its own set of problems, especially if we already don't like the neighbors. They could pick someone shitty to fuck with us, perpetuating a vicious cycle. Recall here the Cusimano shit on the Sopranos over a little dinner party gathering. Well, Jeannie anyway.
But that bar with the Goomba Murano glass?
What's done rather eloquently and efficiently is the layering of it across the show. Tony complaining about Cusimano and perhaps hatching his plan to fuck with him at the end. Contrasted, of course, with Cusimano's dinner guests explaining the Soprano family as if they were a painting or exhibit at the new Museum of Science and Trucking.
It's museum quality work, I admit that.
This all got me thinking about why we let him get to us. Part of it's got to be that unlike friends or even colleagues to a degree, we don't choose our neighbors, unless you're on a co-op or HOA board and have clout to pick, even if it's indirectly, who your neighbors are, or who meets your ideal neighbor profile, at the very least.
We'll buy a new car, it'll raise my profile.
Their forced, constant proximity means we have to deal with them, especially those ones who just happen to come out of their house the exact same time you do, without exception.
Fucking guy.
Another element to this is the collision of differing lifestyles. Tony's barbecue fests versus, say, a more quiet, tranquil type. One might be meticulous about their lawn or the shape of their bougainvillea climbing up their facade, whereas the other might be content to let it go full Amazon rainforest.
Oh, he's a bushman of the Kalahari.
See, that's why I don't tell you anything.
There's also the petty power struggles, parking spots, checking on permits with the city anytime a service vehicle pulls up. You know who you are.
Considerate prick.
Next, and I think this is a new category. It either occurred to me after the last one or while watching a hit as a hit. Whatever the case, this is called the little moments like this that were good.
The little moments. Like this. That were good.
Carmela's Women Are Better Savers to Let's Go to Georgette Klinger's for a Full Spa.
Women are better savers than men.
The irony of that arc and the speed with which it happens, all within a short kitchen sequence. Such a perfect comedic contradiction for the moment. A verbal U-turn, but without a signal. It's like Carmela's flipping channels mid-sentence, and two opposite thoughts overlap. As always, it perfectly encapsulates her humanity. Most people's humanity. All from a single line of dialogue. Loving to preach one thing while craving the opposite. Another little moment that was good, the camera's focus on Tony's lower half during his golf swing. He might have hit one, as he says, but his form is crap. More public course than country club. That whole contrast. But nothing some YouTube tutorials couldn't clean right up. What this scene does quite neatly, though, is make us warm up to Tony even more. He's the underdog, vulnerable, and the look on his face when Cusimano realizes it, but does exactly nothing about it, speaks volumes. His guilt and regret are really what's in that box Tony hands him at the end. Moving along, the song you named Harpo after. Today it's Genie. Of course, there's the little banger from 1980, Little Genie by Elton John, who wants his genie to be an acrobat after, of course, stepping into his life from a bad dream. Hey, that's not too dissimilar from Tony. I Dream of Genie Cusimano.
If the shoe fits.
Cannonball Adderley saxophoned about his genie, and Matt Monroe crooned about his. If you aren't paying attention, you might mistake him for the chairman of the board. Voices eerily similar in that song, especially when compared to Sinatra's song about Nancy. Okay, for Commendatori Corner, where I dust off my statue of Chase on my mantle and admire where his brilliance shined through each episode, I'm always intrigued by Tony's deciding to fuck with Cusimano upon realizing he wasn't a real friend. Off the heels of those stupid questions.
Did you ever meet John Gotti?
The assumptions or suppositions we make about fucking people based on their heritage or backgrounds. I've experienced it myself in its own form, namely in this interesting business of entertainment that I personally know another person purely based off the fact that their parentage happens to be the same as mine.
Wasn't even a fucking Indian.
Chase completes Tony's arc here, from soft and almost deferential neighborly friend to calculating one-upsmanship. Tony has the last laugh, and in many ways can forget the whole ordeal, move on to bigger and better things. Whereas Cusimano will probably live with it indefinitely, might even end up putting a strain on his marriage. Tony might have lost the battle, but like most instances, he wins the war. And finally, who could have built this? Christopher and Adriana's outfits while waiting for their burger baskets. Simply iconic and unforgettable. What strikes me now that I'm older is the promise, the ambition that these two, when together, express. It's like a young Jay-Z and Beyonce in that music video. Me and my girlfriend. The Bonnie and Clyde track. I don't know, just evokes this youthful invincibility like nothing else.
That guy's a gangster? I'm a gangster. I'm an OG original gangster, not him.
No one's ever looked better waiting on a couple burger baskets. I personally also see a little Rocky and Adrian here, even down to the color palette, or Michael Jack and Ola Ray in the Thriller video, or Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke in Before Sunrise, even Cage and Shu in Leaving Las Vegas. It's also a top-tier couple's Halloween costume, without peer, you ask me. That's all I got. Thanks for listening. That's how you support this show, by the way, by listening and sharing it with another person, telling them to do the same. Thanks. See you next time.